Tonight, millions are watching. The cameras are rolling. And Jim Acosta, he's smirking, ready to humiliate his guest. But what happens next? No one saw coming. Jim leans forward, his voice dripping with confidence. Karoline, let's be honest. The former administration you worked for, wasn't it built on misinformation, conspiracy theories, and outright lies? He leans back, waiting for the usual nervous defense. But Karoline, she doesn't flinch. Instead, she smiles. Then with complete composure, she speaks. Jim, I have to admire your confidence. It takes real guts to sit there, on national television, and accuse others of misinformation when your own network has spent years pushing false narratives. The room shifts. The audience murmurs. Acosta wasn't expecting this. But Karoline isn't done. She leans in, her voice steady. Jim, do you remember 2017? When you ran a segment claiming the White House was trying to silence the press, conveniently leaving out that you interrupted the briefing 3 times before being asked to leave? Acosta's smirk fades. His fingers tap the table. Or how about last year, Karoline continues, when you pushed the narrative that the border crisis was manufactured? That didn't age well, did it? The silence is deafening. Acosta shifts in his seat. And then, the final blow. See, Jim, the problem with sitting on a throne of lies is that eventually the truth catches up. And tonight, it just did. Boom, silence. Acosta has nothing. Within seconds, the internet explodes. Jim Acosta humiliated on live TV. Karoline Leavitt shuts down CNN host. The headlines are everywhere. And just like that, Jim Acosta isn't controlling the narrative anymore. This wasn't just another debate. No, this was personal. For Jim Acosta, taking down Karoline Leavitt wasn't about facts. It was about power, and he had tried this before. You see, Jim Acosta built his career not on journalism, but on something far more dangerous: performance. He didn't report the news. He became the news. If there was a controversy, Acosta was there, front and center, not asking questions, but demanding attention, interrupting press briefings, shouting over officials, picking fights that would go viral. He knew one thing: in the modern media landscape, outrage sells. And so he weaponized it. When the cameras were on, Acosta transformed into the fearless truth seeker, challenging authority, standing up to power. But when the cameras were off, it was just another act. And the act had worked for years, until now. Because tonight, he wasn't up against a weak opponent. He was up against Karoline Leavitt. The rise of Karoline Leavitt, a different kind of fighter. Unlike Jim Acosta, Karoline didn't crave the spotlight. She didn't need to be the loudest voice in the room. But when she spoke, people listened. She wasn't just another talking head. She wasn't part of the old political machine. She represented something different, something the media couldn't control. A new generation, a bold, unfiltered voice that refused to bow to the establishment. When Karoline first entered politics, the media laughed. She's too young, they said. She won't last. They dismissed her as inexperienced, naive. But then, they made a mistake. They pushed too hard. They tried to silence her. They tried to define her before she could define herself. And Karoline? She fought back. While others danced around the truth, she spoke it clearly, fearlessly, unapologetically. When reporters twisted facts, she fired back with receipts. And when the media thought they had her cornered, she flipped the script. And that's exactly what she was about to do. To Jim Acosta. Jim Acosta had been waiting for this moment. For years, he built his reputation on moments like this. Aggressive questioning, framing narratives, twisting words. He believed in controlling the conversation before the other side even had a chance to respond. And tonight, he thought Karoline Leavitt would be just another easy target. He sat across from her, microphone in hand, smirking. The cameras zoomed in. The audience watched intently. Then Acosta made his move. Jim Acosta, smirking. Karoline, let's be honest. You're desperately trying to join what I'd call the all-star team of liars. He paused for effect, watching for a reaction. Karoline didn't move. Jim Acosta, mocking. Your former boss was a professional at misleading the public. Is that what you're trying to do now? Carry on his legacy of deception? Laughter from the audience. Acosta leaned back, as if he had already won. Karoline? She didn't flinch. She just smiled. Karoline Leavitt, calm, composed. Jim, that's an interesting accusation coming from someone who has spent years feeding the American people misinformation on a silver platter. Costa's smirk flickered, but Karoline wasn't finished. Karoline leaning in slightly. You want to talk about an all-star team of liars? Fine, let's talk about that. She pulled out a stack of printed headlines. Karoline. March 2020, you claim the former president told people to drink bleach. That never happened, but you pushed the story anyway. Acosta's face hardened. He opened his mouth, but Karoline continued. Karoline. August 2021. You called the Afghanistan withdrawal a success story. A week later, 13 American soldiers were dead, thousands left behind. And your network? Silent. A murmur rippled through the audience. Karoline, pressing in. October 2022. You dismissed concerns about election integrity as baseless conspiracy theories. Months later, your own network had to issue corrections. Acosta shifted in his chair. His fingers tapped against the table. He had nothing. And then, the final blow. Karoline, delivering the killer line. You talk about all-star teams of liars, Jim? If that team existed, you'd be the captain. Silence. Acosta had no comeback. For the first time, Jim Acosta wasn't leading the conversation. He was desperately trying to keep up. Silence. Jim Acosta shifts in his chair. His smirk is gone. His confidence vanished. The moment Karoline Leavitt delivered the final blow, the internet took over. Twitter exploded. Facebook flooded. YouTube clips went viral. Acosta exposed. Rana, facts over feelings. Karoline wins. Millions watched in real time as Acosta, once the loudest voice in the room, sat there, speechless. And then the memes began. A side-by-side image, Acosta smirking before the debate, and his stunned face after. The caption, confidence, 100-0 real quick. Another one? Karoline, arms crossed and smiling. The text, when you bring a spoon to a gunfight. Commentators wasted no time. Ben Shapiro called it the most satisfying debate moment in years. Tucker Carlson declared, Acosta thought he was in control. He wasn't even close. Charlie Kirk said, Jim Acosta's credibility just collapsed on live TV. And Acosta, he knew it. For the first time, he wasn't leading the conversation. He was the conversation. He tries to pivot, a nervous chuckle, a forced attempt at control. Jim Acosta, hesitant. Well, Karoline, let's keep things in perspective. Karoline Leavitt, calm, cutting in. Jim, the perspective is this. The American people are tired of being lied to, and they're tired of you. The audience gasps. Jim Acosta blinks. No words, no comeback. Twitter erupts again. Mega Patriot. Did she just say what I think she said? This is brutal. A real news now. Jim Acosta just lost everything in real time. Lib tears daily. CNN must be in full meltdown mode right now. This is gold. The debate was over. The internet had spoken. Jim Acosta? He had just been fact-checked by reality. CNN was in full meltdown mode. Their star journalist had just been exposed on his own network. In boardrooms, producers scrambled. Executives panicked. Damage control was already in motion. CNN official statement. While Jim Acosta engaged in a passionate discussion with Karoline Leavitt, certain claims require further clarification and context. Too late. The internet wasn't waiting for context. Acosta, desperate to regain control, did what every media figure does when they're losing. He went to Twitter. Acosta, Jim Acosta's official account. Engaging in tough conversations is what journalism is all about. Some people prefer talking points over truth. I'll let the audience decide. Press freedom, to stay informed. Weak, predictable, and the internet wasn't having it. Well, Patriot Mike, Jim, you didn't engage in a conversation. You got obliterated. Real news now. Press freedom. Dude, you just got fact-checked into oblivion. Mega Warrior, you didn't have a tough conversation. You got roasted live. But the real disaster? The flood of receipts. Fox News. Headline: Jim Acosta's career just imploded on live TV. The internet reacts. The Daily Wire, CNN in panic mode as Karoline Leavitt's debate victory takes over social media. Newsmax. Jim Acosta gets destroyed on national television. Can he recover? Even left-wing outlets had no choice but to acknowledge it. Politico. How one CNN interview turned into a media firestorm overnight. The Atlantic. Jim Acosta versus Karoline Leavitt. A public relations nightmare for CNN. Acosta's weak attempt at defending himself? A disaster. And Karoline? She didn't even need to say another word. She had already won. The internet moves fast. One viral moment can destroy years of credibility. And for Jim Acosta, that moment had arrived. The morning after the debate, CNN's newsroom was in full crisis mode. CNN internal memo leaked. We must shift the focus. Move the narrative. Do not address Acosta's exchange directly. Translation? Pretend it never happened. CNN executives hoped the outrage would fade, but this time, it didn't. Media research poll. 72% of Americans believe mainstream media pushes political narratives over facts. Gallup report, trust in CNN drops to an all-time low following viral Jim Acosta moment. Acosta, once one of the loudest voices in political media, was now a punchline. Real news now. Rip to Jim Acosta's credibility. 2017 to 2024. A conservative daily. CNN's biggest star just became its biggest embarrassment. Even former CNN journalists started weighing in. Former CNN reporter, anonymous source, Jim Acosta spent years creating viral moments, but this time, he became the moment. For Karoline Leavitt, this was more than just a debate win. Fox News segment. Karoline Leavitt just solidified herself as one of the strongest conservative voices of this generation. The Federalist. The moment Karoline Leavitt shut down Jim Acosta on live TV was the moment she became unstoppable. Daily Wire op-ed. This wasn't just a win for Karoline, it was a win for every American tired of media deception. In the end, this wasn't just about Jim Acosta versus Karoline Leavitt. It was about truth versus deception. It was about media control versus the people fighting back. And it was about one undeniable fact. The mainstream media is no longer untouchable. Because when the truth finally comes out, no amount of spin can stop it. This wasn't just a debate, it was a turning point. For years, mainstream media controlled the narrative. They decided what stories mattered. They labeled truth as misinformation. They silenced voices that didn't align with their agenda. But that control? It's slipping. 87% of Americans believe mainstream media is biased. Trust in traditional news outlets has hit an all-time low. People aren't buying the lies anymore. They're asking questions. They're demanding accountability. The American people deserve the truth, and if the media won't give it to them, we will. Jim Acosta's viral defeat wasn't the first media reckoning, and it won't be the last. More and more people are waking up. The next generation of journalists, commentators, and leaders won't be controlled by corporate media giants. They'll be independent, unfiltered, fearless. This debate was about more than Karoline versus Acosta. It was about truth versus manipulation. It was about freedom versus control. And most importantly, it was about you. And most importantly, it was about you. Because the future of information isn't controlled by CNN, MSNBC, or any mainstream network anymore. It's controlled by the people. If you're tired of media deception, if you believe in truth over propaganda, then let your voice be heard. Share this story, expose the lies, and never stop questioning the narrative. Because the fight for truth, it's just getting started. If you're tired of media deception, if you believe in truth over propaganda, then let your voice be heard. Smash that like button. Drop a comment below. Do you trust mainstream media? Yes or no? And most importantly, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the fight for truth, it's just getting started, and you don't want to miss what comes next.